From America to Australia and everywhere in between, we bring you inspiring, informative interviews with accomplished South Asian diaspora spanning every field and walk of life. Welcome to the Desi Buzz Talk Show with your host, Dr. Shabana Parvez. Welcome to the show. I am so pleased to have with me from the UK, Debasmita Dasgupta. She is an award-winning artist, graphic novelist, and a film producer. She works at the intersection of art, cinema, and cultural storytelling. Her graphic novels have reached global audiences through publishers such as Penguin Random House, HarperCollins, Scholastic, Oxford University Press, Lerner Publishing Group, and Barefoot Books. As an independent film producer, she creates cross-cultural cinema through her production house, FilmsPositive. Her debut feature, Before Life, After Death, premiered at the Singapore International Film Festival and is now streaming on Netflix across Asia, Australia, and New Zealand. Her second feature, Produire, Dust in the Wind, recently premiered at IFFM in Australia, while her upcoming project, The Ghost and the Gun, is a Malay-British World War II action drama set in British Malaya. As an art for change advocate, she mentors emerging and aspiring artists, partnering with global nonprofits and educational institutions. She was born in Calcutta and now lives in the UK, where she's joining me from. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Dr. Parvez, and it's an absolute delight to be speaking with you, knowing about your body of work. It's just such a great delight to be speaking with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyways, let's get right into it. I want to talk about a little bit about your background. You were born in Calcutta and now you're in the UK. In these two locations, these two cities, how has that shaped your worldview and, created to your creative voice?
It's very ironical that, to me, despite the obvious differences that, Calcutta and the UK have, I feel a lot of similarities. I observe a lot of similarities between these two places, and primarily because of the cultural intersections, the conversations, the presence, the omnipresence rather of culture and art around you that you could feel in both the places. So when I was growing up in Calcutta, I grew up in a very creative atmosphere. My father is into theater. He's an actor, director.
Okay, so it's in the family, it's in the blood.
And my school was actually, one of the main persons behind the making of my school was this important filmmaker, Satyajit Ray. So he was a great influence to my school. So I grew up in that atmosphere where, arts and culture and reading and drawing and singing all were part of me. And I feel like after I moved to the UK, it has kind of that journey kind of continued because I could also see that in the UK, in particular, in terms of arts, you could go to museums, you have the presence of libraries around you where you could go and read books. I think that always influences an artist, right? The luxury or the privilege of having the presence of art around you always makes you a better creator, I feel.
Perfect. Good. So before doing this, before becoming an award-winning artist and filmmaker, were there any other early experiences or influences that might have pushed you towards this visual storytelling?
Absolutely. Like I said, because of my father, I think I was always exposed to a lot of international arts and culture. So not just, like going to theater or seeing his shows, but also reading a lot about different literature from different parts of the world, whether, it was like, for example, Chinese literature or Russian stories, Russian folk tales. Those were very much present in my house. Then I was also, like in terms of cinema, I was exposed to global cinema as well as local cinema because there were, when I was growing up, there was Mrinal Sen, Satyajit Ray, Buddhadev Dasgupta. I was watching their films. At the same time, because of my father, I was also watching Truffaut or Godard or Kurosawa, and all those films also had a great influence on me. So I think yes, going back to your question about what shaped, I think as a child, when you're growing up, when you're exposed to different things, that always makes an impression on you.
That's good. Now, in your career currently, you're you actually have a lot of social advocacy in your career, as you know, the publishing and then the cinema. So now, is this something you had just set out to do, or did it just evolve organically?
Dr. Pervez, I think you will agree with me that these things, they don't get imposed on you. They happen very naturally.
Mhm.
You don't become, you don't start talking about social or artistic advocacy or multiculturalism just like on a particular day, right? It's part of your being. It's part of
Mhm.
how you're growing up. It's your politics. It's your identity. So it was very natural. The moment I started creating something, it was a part of me which was getting an expression in the form of visual stories.
Okay, so this is very, very, yes, uh, self-expression, very organic, very authentic for you.
Absolutely.
So it becomes
Absolutely.
natural. That's the best way. So you've worked across Asia, Europe, and other places. So how do you feel that you stay culturally authentic while you're telling stories that you want to resonate with a global audience?
I think that happens at a very initial stage, again, going back to my childhood.
Mm.
When you start respecting your roots, understanding your roots, when you're very
Mhm.
much familiar with your roots, I think that's where your identity, your ideas start taking shape. So so even later on in my life, when I started venturing out of India, I was living in the UK for more than a decade, and now I live in the in Singapore for more than a decade, and now I live in the UK. I think wherever I have been, I have always been very aware of my identity, my roots, and I have been also very open towards respecting other cultures,
Mhm.
embracing other ideas. So that has always shaped what I have been creating.
That's really good. That's really good advice, I guess. There, stay authentic, know yourself, so that when you're secure and grounded and authentic in yourself, you can respect and tolerate everybody else. And stay true to that. And that's great. So tell me about like a little bit your storytelling. Your work is at the intersection of you do art, cinema, and the cultural storytelling. How do you decide which particular medium you're going to use for a particular story?
Uh, that is so I create graphic novels,
Mm-hmm.
which I write and I draw. And I also produce cinema.
Right.
So, what I feel is these two mediums, even though they're both visual storytelling mediums,
Mm-hmm.
the process is very different because graphic novels, a lot of the work is done individually by me. So I could just be in my studio and write, and from ideation to publication, a lot of things can be done by me. Of course, there is a publishing house, they will take care of the publishing part and all of that. But the creative process, the gigantic amount of work can be done solely by me. Whereas when it comes to filmmaking, even if I have a story idea, I won't be able to make the film by myself.
Right.
I would need an army of people to execute
Mhm.
that project. So it's a collective work.
Mhm.
So I think uh, the the understanding of what happens or how it will take shape, whether it's a graphic novel or whether it's a film, it's decided at its very inception stage, because a graphic novel is a very personal thing. It comes
Mhm.
from me, whereas a film, even if it comes from me, most of the time it doesn't, because there are script writers or
Right.
directors who would approach me with their
Mhm.
stories, and then I would evaluate whether I could become the producer or not. But even if there is a story idea that comes from me, I would still need a collective to make it happen.
Mhm. Great. So, as you said, that you're an illustrator and a film producer, how does your visual sensibility, how does it influence your approach to the narrative structure of your work?
So I think I have always been a visual thinker.
Mhm.
Like, even if you give me any problem, my first problem solving mechanism will be visuals. So I have
Mhm.
always been a visual thinker. So whether it's in films or in my graphic novels, which is a very creative side of work, and in films, I mostly look at the business side of filmmaking, right,
Mhm.
as a
Right.
producer. So, but at the same time, the way I create these strategies, let's say for film production, starting from development to distribution, I create visual maps because that helps me understand how I will shape the project, how and when I will execute things.
Mm.
Even I use colors and all of that to, make it very colorful. Also
Mhm.
to make myself entertained, I guess, by
Yeah,
doing
right.
all of that. So yes, I think that is very much there. The visual thinking, the visual narratives are there. But at the same time, the visual format also helps me understand whether in graphic novels or even in cinema the pacing of the story, like
Mhm.
how is the story flowing? Is it getting stagnated, or is it moving very fast, or is it very abruptly ending? So those things also help me in, I mean, I get very much influenced by that when I see the visuals, when I see it in the
Mhm.
form of visuals.
I see. And just some of your stories, a lot of them actually have these recurring themes like identity, resilience, and the social reality. Are there other themes? One of my questions is why do you return to those themes more repeatedly? And and then what other kinds of themes do you find yourself using more in your storylines?
I think it's a very natural thing. It's not like when the stories come to me, it's not very intentional, right? That I'll
Mhm.
sit one day to think, okay, I'm going to write about this.
Right.
The stories come to me. The stories come from your lived experiences, from
Hmm.
the way you see the world around you, how you perceive things, how you unpack certain realities and try to, also understand the bigger realities.
Hmm.
So the stories, when they come to me, then I start thinking how I want to actually create them. Now, because of my identity, because of how I see the world, I think the themes are also very, like, there are certain recurring themes for sure.
Hmm.
The One of the most important things I feel is the idea of happiness, which is very underrated,
Hmm.
because we take these words at a very face value nowadays. But I think the concept of happiness, like in whatever you're doing, is so important. And my mother, she
Hmm.
has this very interesting way of saying that happiness is a habit and you have to
Hmm.
practice. So if
Hmm.
you don't practice to become happy, then there is no point. So
Hmm.
everything that you do, there will be challenges, of course. But I think that's why every character that I create, whether in my graphic novels or even in cinema, I want to see that my characters, despite their challenges, they're also finding their happiness even if it is in the form of smallest nuggets.
Yeah, that's really powerful. That's very inspiring too. Very real. And it's not all roses and it's not all, bad. It's just finding the good golden moments in between with whatever is going on. That's a really good lesson. So, as you have some of your stories are, can be very sensitive issues or complex experiences, how do you prepare yourself emotionally for that before starting that project?
Yes, I think it's really, if you are a creative, if you are an artist, the first and foremost thing is that you should have empathy. And again, empathy is not something that can be taught in school,
Mhm.
right? It's everything around you, your family, your school, of course, your friends, your peers, your family members, your partner, everybody helps you understand what it means, how you thrive in a team. So
Right.
you understand others, you try to understand others, you give chance to another person. And even
Mhm.
if you don't agree, and this is so important, I feel, in today's world, that
Mhm.
we don't have to live in black and white. There can be
Mhm.
so many other shades in between.
Right.
And we often forget that. Like, you and I can completely agree to disagree, yet we can have an absolute beautiful relationship.
Mhm.
So that is so important. I think that's where any topic, because every topic can be very sensitive. And when you have that sense of empathy, the sense of understanding the other, whether it could be other person who is from a different race or different country or different
Mhm.
speaks a different language or a different religion, but there are commonalities, there are
Mhm.
bridges and
Right.
lesser walls, you
Mhm.
know. The more you see the bridges and the lesser you find the walls, I think that's where you start
That's
connecting.
easier. Yeah, the empathy. That's true. So this global, I mean, that obviously lets you have a global approach, or and you have been fortunate enough that your graphic novels have been published with the publishers such as Penguin, Random House, HarperCollins, Oxford University Press, etc. So this global readership, what does that mean to you as a creator?
I think because every story, again, you know, if the story is rooted,
Mm-hmm.
then it will be able to go to different places. And
Mm.
it's not like I have this feeling that stories are not, they're not possessions, they are travelers.
Mm.
They need to travel. You don't hold them back, you know, you share. Stories are meant to be shared.
Yeah.
And that's how you connect. And I like this word called glocal, which
Mm-hmm.
is if a story is really local, if you really understand the local values, the local sentiments, it will have the potential to reach at the global level.
That's interesting. I have
That's
not
how
heard
I
that term
approach that.
before. That's cool. Yeah. So one of your stories, is Terminal 3, and it was set in Kashmir, yeah, which obviously has a lot of conflicting and tension in the backdrop. So it requires a lot of deep sensitivity. In your task of bringing that story to life, what was the most challenging thing?
I think the most challenging thing was not getting trapped into the stereotypical ideas of,
Mm-hmm.
Kashmir's narrative,
Mm-hmm.
because the most obvious thing was to just, talk about the conflict and again pointing fingers at somebody, uh, from your own point of view,
Mm-hmm.
which if you read Terminal 3 graphic novel, I have actually deliberately not said at any point who is responsible for doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Because at this point in the year, like now it's 2026, you can't say that because of this person or because of this person this has happened. It has happened for many many reasons, and for, it has a multidimensional effect.
Mm-hmm.
Now just pinning down to one person or an individual or a collective and saying, okay, because of this has happened, you can't find a solution. To find a solution, you also have to see the bird's eye view. You have to get that bird's eye view of the whole problem and try to at least, look at the problem from different point of views. So when I was writing that story, to me, there were two very important things. One was that stereotypical idea of Kashmir. I didn't want to create that. The second was how, my protagonists, Kab Nazir and Noor, how they are just teenagers, just like any other teenager from any other part of the world. They have their lives, which are also very relatable to any other teenager.
Mm-hmm.
They have their desires, they fall in love, they have their secrets, they get angry with their close ones. These are very common things, and we often forget. The moment we say, oh, it's a story from Kashmir, that means it has to have a lot of, gray elements.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas that's one of the reasons why I deliberately chose a lot of shades of pink and, magenta in my storytelling to tell the
Mm-hmm.
story of Kashmir.
That's great. Yeah, show that humanity, it's like humanity reaches across it all borders and every place. So that's good. You're also your books, speaking about reaching across, you've created books that were for children, middle grade readers, and also books for adults. Like how do you change your approach, if at all, with through the age groups for your storytelling?
I think that definitely that depends on the audience, because of course when you are writing a picture book, let's say for a 7-year-old, and you're writing a novel for a young adult, 18-year-old, or an adult graphic novel even,
Mhm.
um, of course the language is going to change, the creative expression is going to change, my artistic style also changes. um, there are also certain publishing standards, because, for example, a picture book will only have 500 words, whereas, a graphic novel for an adult will have 20,000 words.
Mhm.
So those kind of things are also there. But at its core, I feel it's again understanding who you are communicating with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's say if I'm communicating with you, I will say things in a certain way. Whereas if I'm communicating with a 7-year-old, I will be saying the same thing probably, but in a completely different form.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's the difference. That's how I see it. I really see what I create as a medium of conversation
Mm-hmm.
with a person. And the more I see that person in front of me, the better it gets in terms of my expression.
Ah, that makes sense. That's great. And so now you just released Faiza is a Fighter. What do you think? What kind of conversations do you think that book might spark among young readers?
I'm really, really delighted and very thrilled and touched that the book has already started reaching out to a lot of people. And the biggest rewards are when people write to me, like they discovered the book and they write to me on Instagram or on LinkedIn, like, "Oh, I read this," and or my
Mm-hmm.
little one has read this and they loved it. Um, One of the main things, of course, Faiza is a fighter. From the name itself, it suggests like she's somebody who has a lot of resilience and she's not
Mm-hmm.
going to give up. She's going to fight back. But there is a poem that I have written in the book. And if you just allow me, I have the book. Can I just read
Sure,
that?
sure. That'll be great.
So it's actually, this is the book.
Yeah, it's a beautiful cover. Very nice. Cute. I like her eyebrows, just the intensity you can see in there, her facial expression. Yeah.
Thank you. And so this is a conversation between Faiza and her father. So
Mm.
whenever Faiza feels a bit, disappointed,
Disheartening. Hmm.
challenged, yes. So they have this conversation. The father starts asking her a question like, "Who are you?" And she says, "I'm a fighter. What will never go away? My fighting spirit. If you fail, I will try. If you fall, I will rise. When in doubt, I will close my eyes and say out loud, fight, Faiza, fight."
That is great. That's so amazing. And it's obviously it's not just is applicable, not just about fighting like boxing or anything like that, but it's really about fighting for whatever it is, right? Your beliefs, fighting for your rights, fighting for something you want to achieve. It's like so universally applicable. Very nice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so now your production company is at Films Positive, which you co-founded, and
Yeah,
you co-founded that you wanted to produce cross-cultural cinema. When you did that, were there any gaps in mainstream filmmaking that you were hoping to address?
absolutely. There was Films Positive. I started Films Positive in 2018,
Hmm.
and it was a very conscious decision. And I wanted to create cinema which is independent cinema and independent filmmaking. Just for people who do not understand what is independent filmmaking, it's independent films are the films which are not backed by studios. So that means as an independent producer, I'm raising finances by myself, and I'm from the making to its distribution, everything is done independently without the support of big studio systems.
Hmm.
The reason for that is there are many, many stories which go unheard because of these dominant studio structures.
Hmm.
They, for them, most of the time, and I'm not saying there are no exceptions, there are multiple exceptions for sure, but majority of the studio films, what happens is they are only looking at the business side of filmmaking.
Right. Hmm.
So in doing so, a lot of independent voices get compromised.
Hmm.
They are asked to create things in the form of a template, whereas independent cinema can break those norms and don't completely compromise on the creative voice. So
Hmm.
that was the idea, that was intention behind Films Positive, that we wanted to make cross cultural cinema and cross cultural independent cinema. And
Hmm.
the other thing that I also want to, and it's a work in progress for sure because we are a very new company, that we want to also support emerging voices. We
Hmm.
want to create a fund for emerging filmmakers to help them create their stories without any, hindrance from the
Hmm.
external world.
That's great. We need more of that for sure. And so your film, this is an exciting one, right? This is your film, which is on Netflix, reaching global audiences before life, after death. How does it feel when you see that on, a platform like Netflix to see it's a very personal project and you found international viewership through that?
Well, I mean, I must say I mean, it really feels surreal.
Hmm.
Because even today, when I tell people that, oh, the film, it was my debut feature and it went
Hmm.
on Netflix. And interestingly, the film was shot during COVID.
Wow.
It was shot in November, December 2020 in
Mm-hmm.
Singapore. So it was a time when everything was locked down and we were shooting a film.
Hmm.
And that film, which came from a very, very personal space, again, going back to what you were asking initially about observation and
Hmm.
empathy and,
Hmm.
understanding other stories, my life, my lived experiences in Singapore kind of created that was a seed of before life after death, right?
Hmm.
And then that kind of a film going to, first of all, to Singapore International Film Festival for its premiere, and from there to Netflix, the journey has been incredible. And I must say that yes, it was a lot of hard work. There were many challenges. Like I said, independent cinema is very challenging
Yeah.
because you're doing a lot of stuff by yourself without any support. But at the same time, when you start doing it, you also find incredible support systems around you. And I
Hmm.
think because of that, these things get possible. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, I'm very grateful to every person who has supported the cinema that we are
Yeah.
trying to
That's
create.
great. The process and the destination, both important, huh?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And then these other two films, they're quite different worlds, very different worlds, like the Ghost and the Gun, and then the Bayard Dust and the Wind. So how are there's such different themes. How do you choose which stories you want to produce? And
Uh, this is an interesting question because, I am a producer. Like I said, I'm an independent film producer. So, for a producer, it's very important to understand both sides of the story. So, you can't just look at a very good story, which is the creative side of filmmaking. You also have to understand the economics of it because a film can be made, but if it is not distributed, if it
Mhm.
doesn't reach out to people, then it's a lot of money which is at stake. Because you see, I'm not putting my money, right? I'm also taking money. So there are investors who are putting their money.
Right.
So there is, even if I'm forgetting about the return on investment and all those things, because there could be investors who do not want a lot of return, but they want their money to come back.
Hmm.
And it means your credibility as a producer, because whatever funds you have raised, you are able to also successfully, return it. So I, as a producer, will have to look at both ends. However, what I always say to young, budding producers that the business of cinema is not math, complete math. It is math, but it is also a combination of art and math. So
Hmm.
it's an art and science, So you have to see what works. And most of the time, it's also your gut feeling when you read a script. And so both the films, Before Life was from a very personal point, but Bayar and this Ghost and the Gun, when I read the script, I felt like, okay, we can go for it. This is something I would like to do. Of course, you relate to the story, you relate to the core content. That if that appeals to you, that is definitely a plus. But not always that's the only thing. You also have to see the viability of making it happen and
Hmm. Hmm.
who will actually support you in that journey.
But you do listen to your gut instinct too in that. Well,
Absolutely.
yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so this film we mentioned, it's set in British Malaya, World War II film. So this is why do you think it's important to revisit some overlooked history through cinema?
I think it's absolutely important because history is written in the past by certain people who wanted to amplify certain voices.
Hmm.
And when you revisit that same section of history, that same point of history from a different angle, you find that there are many stories which were just simplified or completely forgotten. So I really
Mhm.
feel this Ghost and the Gun. It's set in 1940s,
Mhm.
after the World War II. So
Mhm.
post World War II story. Um, and it's a work of fiction, but it's also inspired by the World War II incidents. The things that happened in British Malaya at that time. When we look at World War II, there are so many stories from the western part of the world. And even if there are stories from the East, the stories are mostly told through the white lens, through the white gaze. Whereas
Mhm.
this is the story of the Southeast Asians or the Malaysians, the Malays who were living there, and they were also fighting with the
Mhm.
Brits, right? And most of the time we forget, we say it's World War, but was it really World War?
Mhm.
A lot of countries were colonized and they were forced to fight. And we
Mhm.
forget that narrative
Yeah.
that they were colonized and that's why they were fighting. It was
Mhm.
not the war that they chose to fight. So
Mhm.
yes, it's a nuanced story. It's a very complex story, but it's also a very interesting story, and I feel that it needs to be told.
That's amazing. Now, you also, in addition to all of this, you mentor artists, right? You mentor emerging artists. You work with global nonprofits. What do you feel? We mentioned you've kind of touched on some of these already. I guess. What do you feel is the role that artists play in shaping social consciousness today?
I think for artists, for anybody with a creative mind, creativity is a process, and it has to it it has to happen. And the way I see it is, if I'm trying to, first of all, you don't start creating something keeping in mind that, oh, this is going to change the world.
Mm-hmm.
You just go bit by bit, right? But it's your responsibility to contribute,
Mm-hmm.
to engage. And in that process, the change that you might be visualizing, that might not happen in your lifetime, but at least you have contributed to that journey, which will continue even after you are not there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I see it that way, and that's the reason why I work with a lot of young artists. I mentor them, I train them, I do a lot of workshops. I also do a lot of freelance mentorship, like free mentorship for many budding artists. And I do this with that hope that this journey will continue, and even if I'm not there, there will be someone else who will continue with that journey.
That's great. So you really do think that art can at least start the conversation, increase awareness, you know, so art with purpose is really important.
100%,
Yeah. Yeah.
100%. And not just giving answers, but it will ask questions.
Ask the
It will
questions
art always. Yes, art
second
always helps you.
potentially, right?
Yes, yes, art always helps you see things from a different
Right,
perspective.
right. Okay. Yeah, that is true. Because it may not directly impact social change directly, but it does. It can start the conversation. It can start pushing things in a certain direction, increase awareness. That's great. So, if you weren't doing art or making films, what do you think you would be doing instead as another career?
Uh, this is something I normally don't share, but since you're asking,
Mhm,
I liked singing. So of course I'm not a trained singer. I
mhm,
I only learned singing in my school. So like I said, my school had that kind of an atmosphere. They used to encourage, the teachers used to encourage a lot. So I learned singing in school. But now I mostly sing Bengali songs. So I
mhm.
write and I compose the song.
Oh, cool. Oh, other hidden talents. Amazing. So
And
maybe you compose some songs. Have you ever thought about composing a song for one of your films?
I have actually done that
All
for my.
right.
Yes,
All
yes. In
right.
Mayar, um, there is a song which is mainly, it's Amrita Pritam's lines, poetry, and the director asked me that would you like to do what kind of music. We were having a jamming session, and I kind of came up with a composition, and in the end, that became part of the film.
Great. Okay, that's exciting. So, is there like a character around in across all of your work, your books or films that you relate to the most? And if so, why?
I think I relate to all the characters. It's a very tough question because I feel like I have, I mean, it's not full me, but there is always a part of me
In
which
every
is in my
story.
creation,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Um, but if you want me to choose one character, then I would say Khab Nazir in Terminal 3.
Mhm.
She's one of those characters who
Mhm.
really also because I think, see, every book takes a lot of time to
Mhm.
create.
Mhm.
But Kashmir's story took me even longer because the story started somewhere in 2013. I had this idea, and then eventually I created the story in 2021, and finally it was released in 2022. So it was a long process, and I think the characters stayed with me for a very long time. So yeah, I relate to Cobb the most because she has that, she has that thing of not giving up and always trying to fight back under any circumstances.
Very good. Is there any particular like creative habit or ritual that you cannot work without?
Well, I think it's that visual thinking ability. And this
Mhm.
is something again. It's not a talent. You just have to practice it. It's an art, and you just constantly have to nurture it. So I would continue doing that because I feel like that really helps me understand a lot of things, how I want to execute them, how I
Mhm.
want to plan them. Yeah.
Mhm. Are you at home more with one form versus another, like graphic novel versus film, like when you're having a tough day, which feels like, you know, more home to you? Like,
Both are home to me.
hmm
Both are home to me. If I see it again, if I explain it in the form of a visual, then it will be like it's my home, and
hmm
then I have a bedroom and I have a living room,
hmm
and graphic novels will be my bedroom, and living room will be the films.
Mm, that makes sense. Yeah, because the graphic novels, it's just your private only, it's only
Yes,
individual in living room, it's with other people. Oh, that makes
yes,
sense.
yes.
Okay. Where you get, I know you get ideas of your own, you have your life experiences, and people give you stories. So what's the most unexpected or, something that we wouldn't imagine, like would inspire you to get an idea for a story? Inspiration.
It's funny because ideas there are, I mean, a lot of conversations around this, right? How
Hmm
you get your ideas, how
Right?
you get your inspiration. And the funny part is that you can get your ideas at the most obscure places or unexpected places, right? So
hmm
for me, let's say, I love cleaning my house. Okay. And as I have a book which is about Japanese monks, and they say that cleaning your house is like cleaning your soul. So I clean, like, I do the dusting, I do the scrubbing with my own hands. And while I'm doing that, I start thinking because I'm not, my mind is not going anywhere else, right? So I'm just scrubbing or dusting, and my mind starts thinking. And that's when I get a lot of ideas. So believe it or not, a lot of these stories have actually happened during those times.
Oh, that's great. That's like a kind of a Zen zone for you where you're just
Yes,
open and the ideas will drop in. That's wonderful.
yes.
Do you have any other rituals like that are like for wellness? For example, as a physician, I'm always asking people, what do you do for wellness or balance, for your health, or how do you maintain balance or have a wellness routine so that you can, perform at the best?
Yes, I think there are two things, and I mean, as a medical professional, you would agree that the body and the mind both are needed, right?
Yes, exactly.
So, so for the body, mainly what I do is I do a little bit of yoga,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm also a Kathak dancer. So
Mm.
I do, I mean, now I don't perform on stage, but at least, I practice at home just for my
For the
body
physical
movements. And
activity, yeah.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And for my mind, I think because this is so important, and as a creative, there could be many moments when you're feeling very depressed,
Mm-hmm.
things are not working out properly. I really listen to a lot of good music and good stories.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I have started this habit of thanks to the internet, when I go to bed, I listen to these Zen stories. Like there's a lot of Buddha stories online,
Mm-hmm.
and they're meant for you to go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
So they start, and every time I listen to those stories, they're such wonderful stories. And I start listening to them and I slowly, fade out. So that really helps when I wake up in the morning. I feel so refreshed. So,
Mm-hmm.
yes, that's a very recent ritual that I have started because, especially when you go to bed, suddenly your mind is still very awake and you're still
Mm-hmm.
thinking. And I don't want to get into that zone when I'm going to bed. So,
Right.
music or stories really help.
Mm-hmm. What about your secret to success? My final, like, what is, if you had to say, what is the secret to your success? Your secret sauce, whatever it is. It could be a person, a thing, a ritual, anything.
I think my family,
Mm-hmm.
because it's very important for a family to help you understand that you need to be grounded,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and success should not. First of all, how do you even define success? Like, success always brings this comparison, and you'll
Mm-hmm.
always be better than someone and worse than someone.
Right.
Family always makes me feel that be grounded, keep doing what you want to do. There will be failures. And my father, actually, in the beginning, I mentioned about my father.
Mm-hmm.
He has this beautiful thing that he always told me when I was growing up that, if you observe the athletes when they run, some will come first, second, third, they will only get the trophies. But even the last person, they don't stop running.
Mm-hmm.
Even after knowing that I'm running last, they
Right.
complete the race.
Yeah, they finished. They still crossed the finish line.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. So
that's great.
that's the sportsman spirit
That's
that
great.
you complete. It's not important whether you are winning or losing or you're coming first or second. That's not the idea. The idea is to be on track. Don't get disqualified.
Yeah,
Don't
that's
don't
great. Yeah,
repeat.
that's good.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to have had this conversation with you, and I wish you all the best. It's been really fun. I'm gonna looking forward to what else you're going to be coming up with, and wish you
Thank you.
more success and more awards and more exposure in the future.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Pervez. And it was an absolute delight speaking with you. Thank you
Yeah,
so much for your
thank
time.
you. Thank you.